The Town continued their underwhelming start to the season with a 3-1 loss at Plymouth on Friday night. Alongside me to dissect everything that happened, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, that is a fucking long way for a performance like that.
Yeah. Almost speechless, which doesn't help this, does it?
It's going to be a fun episode, isn't it? As I say, we'll go through it all right after this intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast, which is now award nominated as one of the finalists in the Best Football League podcast category at the Football Content Awards. This season we are sponsored by Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I said before the intro, we are looking back at Plymouth Argyle 3, Luton Town 1, and Jimbo, if there's nights to forget, well, not nights to forget, days, nights, and probably the following day to forget. That's pretty much it.
I wish I could forget it. I tried my very best. I watched for the first time in about 30 years Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with my kids, and that cheered me up. And it holds up, you know, that film, after 30 years. Apart from the CGI about the scorpion and the ant, I think it holds up. It's a decent film. And it took my mind off of it. So do you think maybe we could just talk about that for half an hour?
Oh, well, we can do. I mean, people have already left now and started watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But, you know, it is what it is. Unfortunately, staying on the movie theme, we've seen that movie far too often in 2024.
Yeah, it's almost a horror show, isn't it? A horror film. For once, Kev, I'm just sort of... I don't think I shine much positivity on this, you know, to be honest. After watching that, it just felt like, you know, save for the first 10 minutes and then a good finish from Victor Moses, when it probably felt like the game was gone already. There wasn't much else to really be that positive about. There were lots of chances. But Plymouth always felt like they were creating the better ones or had more, you know, ideas and verve and sharpness about them, and Luton didn't. That being said, they've created enough chances to got something from the game, which is something to be said. But there was obviously Elijah's had 3 for me decent chances, 2 of them probably gilt-edged. He's not scored, and they've stuck theirs away, and it just seems to be that the Premier League issues we were facing last season, which is if you make a mistake, you'll get punished ruthlessly. We thought that wouldn't be the case in this division. Seems to be exactly the case, and it's quite worrying.
That ain't that the truth? They didn't take their chances. That's the thing. They took 3 of them, but there are a whole load more that they didn't take, and that's the more concerning thing. We flagged up in the preview episode where we took penalties for supposedly underestimating Plymouth. We only read by the stats. They were in the bottom 3 for XG chances created and the worst team in the league for XG against. They looked like they'd flipped the script there completely because they were creating chances at will, not necessarily always by design. There was one that came courtesy of the worst shot I've ever seen that, you know, if it hadn't been blocked on its way via another shot, it would have ended up somewhere in Newquay about 3 days later. But that's by the by. I mean, it always felt like a long night when we saw the team news. No Carlton Morris, that didn't come out until right up to the moment. We didn't necessarily think Carlton would start, but if things are going tits up, a la last Saturday, and you've not got Carlton to come on, all of a sudden there is serious pressure to go and get that first goal. Not a much changed team, but obviously 2 changes in the centre of the park. Zach Nelson came in and Tom Krause started. There was no way Tom Krause wasn't going to start. Marvellous Nakamba and Liam Walsh both dropped to the bench. Unchanged side other than that. The only difference in formation was Nelson played in behind Elijah and Clark played in the deep midfield role. That has to stop as of right now. Nowhere near physical enough. And right now, nowhere near good enough on the ball to play in that position. So if we're taking anything from this game, that's the first thing. He cannot play there anymore. Not when you've got Walsh and Nakamba sat there watching it on the bench. We'll come on to that in a minute. Just on Clark, he was the captain for the night. Again, puts him in the microscope a little bit more, and he chose to have that night to have the worst of all performances he's ever had in a Luton shirt. Unfortunately, he wasn't alone. But we did start the game okay. You know, the game plan clearly was to get the fullbacks in behind their defence. We did it seemingly at will. Rue Walters got in a couple of times. Absolutely no end product. Hey, we've been there before. And then 8 minutes in,
Yep.
the most tame ball in from the left wing from Michael Obafemi somehow gets to Ryan Hardy via a deflection off Reece Burke, who really should be throwing himself in front of it and getting rid of the ball. It kind of rolls off over his foot. Hardy's in between 5 Luton defenders who are all static. They're all on their heels. Not one of them's got any proactivity about them. Then there's a runner on the edge of the box who's completely unmarked. Hardy lays it off to him. To be fair to the geezer, he stuck it in the top bin's a treat. Apparently that was his first goal for Plymouth. How's your luck? And from that moment onwards, it was always going to be a very difficult night. Conditions weren't terrible. Certainly weren't as terrible as they were sort of driving down there. But it wasn't a nice sort of occasion. And it didn't get no better from there.
Yeah, and that's a major problem, isn't it? We highlighted it a couple of episodes back where you can't be conceding the first goal, particularly away like that. And, you know, we're talking in hindsight. You're right. There were people saying that we underestimated Plymouth, and we didn't. We looked at the stats. We recorded that podcast pretty soon after the Saturday game where they, from the highlights we saw, we're not going to watch the whole game. We saw the highlights. They got absolutely overrun by West Brom and got saved by the post 3 times. We were thinking there's a good chance here that Luton go 3 up. They said, you know, we highlighted Whittaker because his previous season. But I think, you know, on the day, Ryan Hardy had a really good game. Obafemi had a good game. We made Sissoko look like Ronaldo when he came on, scored 2 goals. All over the pitch, you have to hold your hands up. They played very well, but there's no excuse for that first goal, I don't think. It's just so soft, and it just feels like a knife through butter at times when other teams are attacking. There's far too much ease of getting from the defence through the midfield to the attacking players, and then they're seemingly allowed to just run at the defence without anyone putting a challenge in. And then for that goal, like the first one, a really poor, weak clearance. And yeah, he stuck it in top bins, which is what I'm saying. It seems like we're still getting Premier League finishing against us, but it shouldn't even got to his feet for him to have a go. So you do that and you defend like that, it feels like an uphill task, and it was.
Absolutely it was, yeah. I mean, we went in 1-0 at half-time, but we only went in 1-0 at half-time because Thomas Kaminski's made 2 really, really, really top-draw saves. As I say, one from the same geezer who scored the goal via a shanked shot from Mumba, I think it was, going nowhere near the goal. Probably wasn't even going out for a goal kick. It was going out for a throw-in until it got to Al Raj. And really good save. Kaminski's got no divine right to save that, but he did. And then another one, ball flashes across the box. We're not even looking at runners. The captain, Edwards, comes in at the back stick. How he's missed, I don't know. Credit to Kaminski. Very much in an identical situation to the Windass shot in the first half against Sheffield Wednesday. Ball come in from the exact same side. The exact same man lost the exact same runner. 6 yards out. And thankfully, Kaminski's there to save it and keep us at 1-0. But one of the problems we've got now, and we've given Elijah a lot of grace on this podcast, and we said right at the start, 3 or 4 games probably isn't the right time to judge it. 6, 7 and 8 games, which is where we're at now. Now we've got ourselves a problem, right? Not a problem in the fact that he's not getting chances. That's fine. But those finishes on Friday with a man of his confidence is underground. It's so low. First of all, he was played through by a Plymouth defender, clean through on goal. If he keeps on going in the same direction that he's got, okay, he's on his left-hand side, but the goal is right there to be hit. For some reason, and this can only be a lack of confidence and only trust in his right side. He cuts inside where 3 defenders are. They're never getting back to him if he doesn't cut inside. He's definitely going to get a shot at goal away. He cuts inside, move over. So he could have scored and probably should have scored. And there's a lot of clamour for Joe Taylor, isn't there? And whether that's right or that's wrong, you kind of get the feeling that Joe Taylor's got the confidence where he'd have gone away from the defence and he would have put the shot on goal. Might not necessarily have scored it, but at least we'd have got a shot, which we didn't get there. And then, I don't know, 10 minutes later, we get a free kick on the edge of the box. Usually in that situation, Alfie shoots. He doesn't. He crosses. Elijah beats the offside trap. I don't think he did, actually, but both linesmen didn't cover themselves in glory all night. But the flag didn't go up. He beats the keeper to the ball, but it's almost like he's expecting to get mullered by the keeper, backs out of it with his head, hits his shoulder, goes over the crossbar. I have no idea how we got a corner, but we did. But that has to end up in the back of the net. You're literally 6 yards out with a goalkeeper beaten. You've got to hit the ball on target. And then lo and behold, 5 minutes later, he pings a brilliant volley off of his left foot, having chosen not to go with his left foot earlier in the half. Really good volley that got blocked in and amongst a load of bodies. And you're like, you're pulling your hair out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at that stage now, and I think we've been big supporters of Elijah, and we still will continue to be. That's the whole point. You've got to get behind these players, but he's so woefully out of confidence and out of form, and it happens, and we know this with Elijah. If he does score, he'll go on a run, but at the minute, those 3 big chances, 2 of them were really big for me. The headers were. You have to get them on target.
I mean, we've not even got to the best of the chances in the second half yet, have we?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
That's still to come.
Yeah. I mean, he just has to be getting them on target. He hasn't even troubled the goal there. It's really concerning now. And I think probably if you look at last season when he had a similar sort of start, albeit in the Premier League, he had that Spurs game where he had a really bad open goal miss, and then he was removed from the side for a couple of games, and he came back all guns blazing, and that worked. That Spurs game was the 8th Premier League game, and this was,
and Oxford's going to be the 8th championship
so
game.
Plymouth was the 7th, and Oxford's going to be the 8th, and I just think maybe we're at that stage now, maybe a game earlier, where perhaps he just has to be removed from the firing line, but can he be now? Because I don't expect that Morris is going to be back for Oxford if he's had a slight tweak, and Edwards alluded to that fact. You never know. So will he then trust Joe Taylor to be the man, or does Joe Taylor come in and go alongside him to give him some help? But, something has to change there. I mean, Morris has got off the mark, so, he's got that problem off his back. But if he's not available, then you can't do anything there. It's a real concerning one. We can't keep saying that you're creating these chances and not putting them away, because for as bad as Luton were at the other end, if they put them chances away, we're talking about at least a point, aren't we? And here we're talking about what feels really like a really heavy 3-1 defeat.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to who plays against Oxford and who won't play against Oxford when we do the Oxford preview. I was going to say later in the week, but it won't be. It'll be pretty much right on the heels of this podcast. But I remember sitting there thinking on Friday night, because obviously we were going to have to talk about this, and I knew we were going to have to talk about it. It made me think, when Sluga was making all them mistakes when he first arrived, we had to drop him not just for Sluga's credit and for Sluga's career, but for the other players on the pitch who are doing the work, who are getting the ball into the position where they should be, and and all of their efforts are going unrewarded. It's now becoming unfair on those players for the ball to keep on going to Elijah, and he's not missing them on purpose. Of course, he's not missing them on purpose. No one would ever suggest that he is on this podcast, anyway.
And I don't want us to say that we're not slagging him off.
No,
I like Elijah as a bloke, let alone as a footballer. It's just not happening at the moment.
No, that's it. And strikers go through this all the time. I mean, I watched the Man United game earlier. They have two of them, Rashford and Højlund. Neither of them can hit cow's ass with a banjo at the best of times. But he has to come out of the firing line now. And we have to try someone else in that front line. And we have to see if all of the efforts... Because I think Elijah's somewhere in the vicinity of 20 shots now this season. So now the people that are creating for him, now they deserve to see someone else there now to see if they can put the ball in the back of the net. I think we're at that stage now. As I say, we'll come on to it properly in the Oxford game. But yeah, he hasn't finished missing yet, has he, Elijah? Probably the worst one of the lot really was the one in the second half. I mean, Reece Burke has put in an absolute peach of a ball. It's one of the best crosses you're ever going to see because he's right on the touchline. He's going away from goal himself, Reece Burke, and he just swings his body round. Peach of a ball. Eli hasn't got a jump. He's gone past his marker. His marker hasn't expected the cross at all, whereas to Eli's credit, he's anticipated the cross and he's made the move.
There's no challenge, is there? Yeah.
No challenge at all. All he's got to do is just head that. There's pace on the cross. He's just got to put it on target, and as long as he doesn't head it straight at the keeper, we're 1-1. It was nearer me in the stands, and from that moment onwards, it was like, oh shit, we're getting nothing tonight.
Yeah, and you get those feelings at certain points during the games, and they're too frequent as well, and it's a little dispiriting, isn't it? Because if you're creating that many chances, and there were 18 shots, not all of them on target, obviously, but it's not like there wasn't any ideas, but there wasn't the killer touch, and I think that is the problem. And if the ideas are there, but they're not being realised, then something has to change, I think. And I'm with you. I think we're at that point. I don't want to be advocating for these sorts of things, but I think the evidence is there after 7 games, and for all the positivity there were for the 2 wins before that, it papered over really naff performances, and that's okay. That can happen in football. We'll take that. But then if you put in another naff performance and get walloped, like happened on Friday, and then you're looking to Oxford and thinking, well, that needs to change, but you can't keep doing the same things and get that to change. Don't want to repeat the old adage, but that's where we are.
Yeah, that adage has changed. Insanity is driving to Plymouth on a Friday night, expecting better than that, and then driving all the way back again, walking in the house at 4:10 in the morning. That's insanity, let me tell you. The only good thing at this point was we're only 1-0 down. This is the sign that we're not playing against a particularly great side. We made them look good, don't get me wrong, but any side worth their salt, and we're going to come up against a few in the not too distant future, which is the problem in all of this. Would have been 3 or 4 up, and it would have been Burnley all over again. It really would, but they weren't taking their chances. And then the second goal, I mean, my God, I said at the start of the podcast, we've seen this movie before. We've seen this goal way, way, way too many times now. I mean, Jordan Clark, he's got into the box. To be fair, he's got into a great area. Problem number 1, our final third play's been crap. He's ran straight into a defender, lost the ball. Counter-attack's on. I mean, we've got Moses on the bench at this point, haven't we? But our team's opened up like the Red Sea. One guy, I'm not even sure how to pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try and do it an injustice, but he's gone straight through the middle again. For the love of God, someone please bring these runners down on the halfway line and take a yellow card. But no, he keeps on going. You can't really blame the defence for backing off. It's the first thing that you're taught at school. When there's no pressure on the ball, you drop deep. Do all 3 central defenders have to drop deep when, bearing in mind, there's only one striker all night long? I'm not sure. Someone go out to him and engage at least. At least force him to play that pass that he played out wide to Sissoko a little bit earlier. They don't. He gets to 25 yards out. He puts the ball into Sissoko, who does a fancy move, leaves Rue Waters on his backside. I don't know how the ball got in from there. I haven't seen a particularly good TV angle to show how it got in from there, but we'll give him his credit. It was a good strike. It's ended up in the top corner. But how avoidable is that goal from our attack in the first place, where we should be picking out someone to score in that position, to the back of our net 20 seconds later, it is... I don't know if it's too strong or it's embarrassing.
Well, it's the fact that it's happened before. And it's like, what are we learning here? Because nothing's being learned if it keeps happening. And you're right. If you've got 3 central defenders, surely one engages. You've still got 2 others there, and the wing backs were in place because it was Rue Walters that couldn't get the block in on the shot, and it was an acute angle. So, maybe it's worldy, but should he be scoring from there? It's beyond disappointing, and it's dead. Then the game is dead. They huffed and puffed after such a poor 35 minutes, final 35 minutes in the first half, and you think, well, get into the break and come out and then start firing, and it was just more of the same. And then that happens. On top of that, you've had Mengi go off injured. You've had Tahith Chong get clattered at half time and need treatment and go off injured and not come back. And it just felt like everything was going wrong. And it did, because and then Mads Anderson, who came on for Mengi, he goes off. And now all of a sudden it feels like January again, because you've got in a week Bell, Mengi, Mads, Morrison all out injured, when on that very night Jacob Brown's placed into the squad for the first time since February, and you're thinking, finally, that's the last remnants of that injury crisis out the door and back on the bench. And then all of a sudden 5 players out again, and you're like, we're back to square one now.
Absolutely, yeah. If it could go wrong, it did go wrong on Friday night. I'm glad you mentioned Jacob Brown there, because he was involved in the goal. To our credit, straight after they scored the second one, we've gone up the other end and we've scored. Victor Moses is on the pitch by this point. Jacob Brown's hold the ball up in that attacking left channel. Alfie's sort of got up alongside him. Brown's laid it off to Alfie. Alfie's picked out Victor Moses a treat. I've seen a lot of criticism of Alfie's corners. I will come on to that shortly in the podcast. Someone has asked us to discuss corners. We will do it. But he's picked out Moses a treat. Now, if you're talking about confidence and you look at Elijah, where his confidence is through the floor, you look at Victor Moses and his confidence is sky high, because he's brought that down on his chest, waited for the defender to commit himself and open his legs, and then smacked it right through the middle of them, because he knows the goalkeeper can't possibly get down there because he's covering the bit away from where the defender's blocking. Class. Now, why is this geezer not on the pitch longer? That's what we'll discuss. We'll discuss it in a minute, because there was a substitution in that game that I really, really, really did not like. But we've got a class act there.
Yeah, we have. And I can only think that he's joined late. He's joined after the transfer window. I mean, that's okay. He's a free agent, but he's probably not had a pre-season, although he looks fit. And he's played all his live in the top flight of whatever country he's been playing. And you can see that. The sharpness there, the top flight skill, and that extra bit of vavavoom, for want of a better word, is there.
I mean, he's not Thierry Henry, but, at championship level, he's Thierry Henry.
Yeah, I mean, it was class finish. It was everything that you want Luton's attackers to be, which was an incisive, sharp, one-touch, chest the ball down into an area where the defender can't get it, and, lash it in with absolute accuracy. We should be like sort of, really relishing in this, but you can't, because that should have been the platform to go and at least snatch something when you probably didn't deserve it. And then you go and concede another soft one.
Yeah, I mean, you're expecting the kitchen sink to be thrown at them then. I mean, what is there, 25-ish minutes to go at that point? And if you include injury time as well, you're kind of expecting us on the front foot. To be fair to Rob, he's made all the changes by this point, and the last 2 substitutions were very much attacking substitutions, as they had to be when we were 2-1 down. But we were almost immediately hit with a sucker punch, weren't we, when Randall, I think he was called, again, had the freedom of the centre of the park to run into. He unleashes a 25-yard drive, which when it left his foot, I was like, oh, that's in. Got the shock of my life when smashed the crossbar and came back out. Somehow we've scrambled the rebounds away from our goal and things. But if the second goal wasn't a warning to go out and engage someone from shooting from 25 yards or have that sort of space from 25 yards, we are lacking a leader like you will never believe. Now, we all know who that leader is, and it's unfortunate that he can't be on the pitch. But there are still 11 experienced footballers there. Someone grab something by the scruff of the neck and wring it out of us that wake the up when we're defending Town, because there is no clue at the moment. And Rob's getting pelters for the system. Listen, I'm a full advocate. I hate this formation, right? It's not changing. We found that out for sure on Friday night. It's not changing. But for the love of God, surely a system doesn't matter. Surely if you're not marking someone, and there are people in that system not marking people, if you're not marking someone and you see someone closing in on your goal 25 yards out from it, surely at some point your defensive instinct is going to click into gear and think, I'll go and close him down. But it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or hasn't happened, sorry.
I'm in total agreement here. I think, having a debate about the system is kind of legit if you don't like it, and most don't. I think it's becoming divisive now, and I think that's a problem. But I don't think Friday was about the system.
No, I agree. I will come. We'll have a whole kind of discussion about the ins and the outs and the everything else in a minute. But you're absolutely right. This is about footballers forgetting the basics, really. If you're a defender, you're told to go out and engage the ball, stop the geezer from shooting. It might not even be a centre-back problem. It might be the midfielders. But if the midfielder's been bypassed, you are allowed to leave your position if you're going to go and block a shot. No one's going to say, why did you leave your position and go and block that shot? They're going to say, well done, show some initiative, you've gone and blocked that shot. That's fantastic. We got really lucky when that hit the crossbar, and we got even more luckier that we managed to block the two shots that came in off of the rebound. Where we didn't get lucky, and let's make it perfectly clear for any Plymouth fans that are watching this right now, if Luton had come out of this game with a 2-2 draw, you could have called the police because there had been a burglary committed. But we should have gone 2-2 in this game, because there is no way in this world, and I didn't even need TV replays to tell me. I messaged you near enough as soon as it happened, because I knew that you had TV in front of you. Victor Moses was not offside. I could tell. I sit behind the goal at Kenilworth Road. I've sat behind the goal for 35 years. When you sit behind a goal for long enough, you get a depth perception of where players are and things. You could tell the geezer in the middle was deeper than Victor Moses. Victor Moses almost tripping the linesman up. How the linesman can't see this. And also, Victor Moses isn't stupid. This is no disrespect to Brendan Galloway, but we kicked him out because he wasn't good enough 3 or 4 years ago. If Victor Moses is in front of Brendan Galloway and offside, looking right across the line, then he needs his contract ripping up and going right now, because he can give him 20 yards over 30 yards and still beat him. He wasn't. He was onside. The linesman is literally looking right down at that, and he flags. Now, I don't know if Taylor would have scored or not, because the whistle goes before the ball gets to Taylor, so they could quite legitimately say that the defence stopped, even though you shouldn't. You should play to, right till the end. But Taylor taps it in, and that's 2-2. Now, we haven't in no way, shape or form am I saying that we deserved a 2-2 draw or anything like that. But that goal that move should have been allowed to continue.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at it, there's no conclusive angle, which is disappointing, isn't it? But it doesn't, to the naked eye, look like that is offside. And I don't think that that's offside. And I think that, yes, like you say, a goal there is a steal. And we're going away talking about something different. We're talking about the same as the last 2 games. Yes, maybe just a point, but not played well and got something out of the game. But again, it's like, well, the injuries happen. We've created enough chances. We're not taking them. A disallowed goal when you're supposed to be throwing the kitchen sink at them, and then, complete, loss of defending at the other end. So, it's a it's a tale as old as time, and that time being the year 2024.
Yeah, I mean, we come away with a Desmond from 2-0 down. Not only does it feel like a win, yeah, it'll have papered over every single crack that got papered over last Saturday. Of course it would. But all of us that made the journey, and there were 1,000 of us down there, which was a really, really good away support, we'd have had something to take out of the night. We wouldn't have enjoyed the performance, but we haven't lost. It would have been 7 points from 9. We'd have gone into Tuesday night, a little bit more optimistic than what many are going to. But we couldn't even hold on to the 2-1. Ended up with 3-1. Same guy who ruined us for the second goal, done the same for the third. Instead of cutting on the outside of the right wing back this time, he goes inside Burke and I think it was Moses at that point. To be fair to Burke, he blocks the first shot. And I swear to God, I'll pull my hair out if I see McGuinness's effort to block the second one much longer. I mean, it looks like he's a salmon that's just come out of water. That's not blocking a shot. That's turning your back and making sure you don't get hurt, dangling a leg and hoping that it hits you. Get your ass out to the geezer. We've just blocked one shot. Okay, it's lucky that it's gone straight back to him, but you make your own luck when you're on the front foot. Get your backside out to him. We're 2-1 down. There's still 5 minutes of injury time left. We've literally just had a goal disallowed. We're finally showing some signs of maybe getting something out of the game. Get out there, block the sodding shot, throw everything in front of it. If it hurts you, then, oh well, so be it. You're getting paid, nicely enough paid. And let's go down the other end and score a goal. Do not turn your back. Do not dangle your leg and hope that it hits you. You're the frigging centre half, right in the middle of the three. You are the one who should be there, ploughing yourself in front of that and blocking it and getting us down the other end. I don't like digging players out, but that showed up our defensive inability or inadequacy perfectly, and that is not good enough.
Especially not when you spent £5 million on it. And, you talked earlier saying you haven't got any leaders, but I think that's what he's been drafted in partly to be doing. But, you say you don't want to dig them out. There was loads of that all over the place. You're talking about that one particular instance of a goal, and that's legit because it's resulted in a goal just when you're thinking you might be able to snatch something out of it, and dead. That's it, dead. But there was loads of that all over the park. That shouldn't happen. You shouldn't, as a main central defender, you shouldn't be turning your back in the way that he did. No questions asked. But there was loads of it. There was Jordan Clark not.
Weak in the tackle.
Not challenging, just outside the box.
It should be said, Krause is absolutely mullered, just on the halfway line. If that's in the Premier League, the referees are blowing up straight away. And you look at the Bruno Fernandes red card on Sunday, this tackle's got 10 times the force behind it and his leg's just as high. It's a Championship, I'm fine with it. In the 1990s, it's well done, great tackle, crack on. In 2024, if it happens on a Luton player, by a Luton player on a Plymouth player, it's blown up. It's just the way the night was going. But yeah, so many times that we could have just stopped it.
It's the basics for me. That is the most frustrating thing about it. If you take the goals out of it, it just felt like you were never going to get on the front foot because the basics weren't there. And I'm talking passes astray, unforced errors. The really frustrating one when you're trying to attack is passes behind players, totally loses momentum. And that's something you just taught as a kid. Play it into the space in front of people. If you're on an attack, and particularly if it's a counter, that's a killer. And they can just, that one extra second where you have to check the run and get the ball back, lets their defenders get back and set. And then you've ruined it. And there was so much of that. And the unforced errors was beyond frustrating. There was one when Luton were chasing at 2-1 and Rue Waters coming out from the back, passed it straight to one of the players under no challenge whatsoever. And yet on the reverse side of it, Plymouth are nipping it about in little triangles to each other at pace, and it's going to the right players, and everything they're doing is almost perfect. And it's not been like that for Luton. And that's why I say it's not the system. That you can't label anything that Edwards is doing at the system if the players are not passing to each other, and then in a defensive sense, if they're not, taking the initiative to block or, like you say, bit of dark arts, take someone down take the yellow card. It's just too easy for the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you look at the yellow cards that we got in the game. I can't remember who it was, but one was for kicking the ball away, wasn't it? And the other was Jordan Clark for moaning about it. Well, if you're going to get a yellow card, kick someone up in the bloody air, especially if they're bearing down on our goal. It's just, yeah, it's so annoying. So, yeah, 3. I mean, you don't need to look at the Premier League. You only need to look at Plymouth. None of their passes, until Adam Forshaw came on, I have no idea what they brought him on for. He put a few into touch, didn't he? Everyone else, the passing was crisp. It was fast. It was free-flowing. If you were a neutral, and if you were a Plymouth fan in particular, you'd have loved watching Plymouth the other night. They were a good watch, and I don't sit there and enjoy watching the opposition play. But, they play the kind of football that I like to watch. Free-flowing, getting men forward. Okay, you leave yourself exposed at the back, but that's the risk that they're prepared to take, and fair play to them. And, if they were playing against a better side, they'd have conceded 4. Just as we'd have conceded 4 or 5 if we were playing against a better side. It was one of those games. But there we go. I mean, yeah, this system, it's getting pelters. Look, if you've listened to this podcast or watched this podcast all season long, or even going into last season, you'll know I'm not a fan of it. You'll know I want us to play a back 4. Largely, really, because I watch a lot of Premier League football. I probably watch more Premier League football now than I did before we got into the Premier League. I don't see a team in the Premier League that play a back 5, so there has to be a reason for that. Not one team play it. So we do. Before we go into the criticisms of it, though, to blame everything on the system is wrong, and here's why. I've got some numbers for you, Jimbo. You know how I like numbers on this podcast.
Hit me.
So, these numbers, 10, 3, 9, 4, 17, 4, 13, 5, 10, 6, 17, 4, 18, 3. Now, the first number is the shots that we've had in each championship game this season. The second number is the shots on target we've had in championship games this season. So, take away the first 2 games. The Burnley game, we didn't have a team, right? We were mixing and matching. I think we can take that away. Take the second game away because we only played for half an hour and then we were down to 10 men. So let's use the last 5 as an example. 17 shots, 13 shots, 10 shots, 17 shots, 18 shots. Now, for a system that's not working, it's creating a hell of a lot of shots. So going forward, this system is working, right? What's not working is the geezer on the end of an awful lot of these shots is misfiring. Now, that's not a system situation. That's a personnel situation, and that has to be rectified. Now, we mentioned that earlier on in the podcast. Where it doesn't work is we look clueless defensively. We look disorganised. We are opened up so easy. Players don't know which run to manage, or if they do, they pick the wrong one. There's not enough protection in front of the defence, which is why we're constantly run straight through the middle. I don't care how many minutes we have to manage of Marvellous. He has to start every single game of football Luton play. Now, if he has to come off after an hour, that's fine. But he has to start, because that was embarrassing the other night. And he's the only one who's got the discipline to just sit there and not care about the rest of the game, but just do his part, that you will not get through the centre of this pitch, right?
I know it's a positional sense as well, hasn't he? He's got that sort of ability, and then other players will feed off that understanding, and it just looks a lot more. It looks a lot more assured, but it was all over the defence, wasn't it? Because I've talked up Reece Burke in the sense that when he's in the defence, I feel a lot more comfortable. He had a stinker as well.
Well, there wasn't anyone that, apart from Moses, there wasn't anyone that didn't, was there? But from an attacking output point of view, this system does work. It's there in black and white, the amount of shots that we have. And we're not a team that shoot from distance. So these are genuine chances in and around the penalty box. Let's say 1 a game is from someone having a pot shot, because we don't have them per se, really. So from an offensive point of view, it works, right? Now, I remember when you and the press boys were down chatting to Robin pre-season, he said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact quote, and I've gone back through all of your work on the Lutonian and I can't find it. But he said something along the lines of, I would rather win a game of football 4-3 entertaining than I would 1-0. And therein lies our problem. We're happy to expose ourselves, or be exposed. Not happy. we're prepared to take the risk of being exposed defensively in the hunt for goals. Now, if some of these chances or a greater proportion of these chances go in, then we're going to win these games 4-3 like he said he'd rather do. But when you're pinning your hopes on one guy up front and that guy's misfiring and you're still leaving yourself open to counter-attacks and exposed in the ease that we are, something has to give. I don't know what it is. It's not going to be the system, right? He had the perfect chance on Friday night when Ted and Mengi went off injured. It was not working. Defensively, we were a shambles. We were all over the place. He had the perfect chance then to go to a back four. He had Rue Waters, who could have just dropped into right centre-half. You could have gone Burke and McGuinness at the centre-half and Doughty at left-back. And you could have brought Victor Moses on there and then and played a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 or however you wanted to control the numbers. He chose to bring Mads Andersen on. Mads Andersen, who hasn't played football for going on 9 months, who can't play left centre-half because he hasn't got a left foot whatsoever. So the defence was immediately unbalanced. It's unfortunate that Mads got injured. I think it was his hamstring that went, so he couldn't carry on. So again, we've now got a second opportunity to go to a back four. But no, this time we bring Victor Moses on, positive, but we put him on at right wing back and we stick Rue Waters from right wing back to the inside left centre back. Again, we don't need to do that. If we've got any ambitions of playing a back four, we wouldn't do that. So we can forget this, my ideal scenario that we're going to play a back four. We're not now. I've come to accept that. If those were two perfect opportunities to do it. So we are going to have to make this five at the back work, or the repercussions are going to be strong.
I think they are. People are annoyed by it. They don't see it working, as you described there. I get the impression it's an attacking thing, so you can have the wing backs, but then they've also got to do their defensive duties as well. And
it's a lot to ask the modern day, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of times this season, Doughty's just been caught at the back stick, not getting his man. So that's not happening in a defensive sense. So I would rather see Alfie Doughty looking forward and getting his head up and going at teams rather than a defensive sense. His stats are still phenomenal. There was a graphic I saw from Sky Sports that he's first for nearly everything. He was top drawer in the Premier League as well. I mean, that's why we were celebrating his new contract. He is, and the chances are being created, they're not being finished. Defensively, the wing-back thing just doesn't seem to be working. There's too much space when balls are crossed into the box. Either post, whoever's got it. But I just think the massive spaces that we're talking about, the players are just seeming to waltz through and play through as well. Sheffield Wednesday were doing it all the time as well, and it was annoying.
Well, they've been doing it for the whole of 2024. That is the problem.
Yeah.
Ever since Tom went down at Bournemouth, we have been exposed in the same spaces. I mean, if you think of the second Bournemouth game, Semenyo absolutely killed us. Absolutely killed us. There are countless examples of it. We attributed it, it's the Premier League, they're damn good players, okay, blah, blah, blah. The geezer on Friday, if he's that good, he'd have started, right? Like you said, we made him look like peak Ronaldo. He can't be that good. The game before against Sheffield Wednesday, they're getting in the same channels. The two games prior to that, the second QPR goal, it's exactly the same. Geezer runs right through the middle from our throw-in, plays it out to the left. The only difference here is they crossed it to the geezer at the back post instead of having the shot from the guy on the left-hand side. It's the same goal in the same area of the pitch, time and time and time again. Now, if we're going to stick with this formation, he needs to find people who will snuff those threats out, because we're only conceding those goals. We're not conceding other goals. Now, I'm absolutely fine. If you want to leave yourself, I don't really get why you would do it. But if you're prepared to go the Kevin Keegan style of you score 3, we'll score 4, at least stop the same sodding goals that are going in, or find a solution to those same goals that are going in. And then we won't have to score 4 goals to win a game. We'll only have to score 2 goals to win a game. And that's a hell of a lot more manageable to score 50% of the goals that you need to win a game of football. And that is where Rob can be criticised. He can't be criticised for Elijah missing chances, other than the fact he keeps picking him. And I understand why he keeps picking him. This is a guy who, after all, scored 11 Premier League goals last season. But he cannot, like you say, Rue Waters playing a pass straight to the opposition. That's not on Rob. That's on Rue Waters. He's a young kid. You don't want to pin it on him. But ultimately, if he's going to learn, he needs to be told, presumably. Jordan Clark losing the ball nearly every single time he had it. Is he a defensive midfielder? Not really. But you can still pass a ball 5 yards. This is basic football, lads. And when all of the basics go out the window, you end up losing 3-1 to Plymouth.
It just seems to me that for an opposition manager trying to plan against Luton, you don't really have to do much work.
No, you have to tell your inverted wingers to be alive, and your striker to make sure he's on the end of the ball.
You just don't have to do much work. You go, well, this has worked for every other team so far. We'll do this, and there'll be spaces, and then it's up to you whether you take your chances. And Plymouth did, and they didn't take all of them. It could have been worse. So, if it was one thing us saying we didn't take our chances, but Plymouth, like you have said, they didn't take theirs. So, I've heard all of the arguments. Well, I think I've heard all of the arguments from fans about the system and some of the decisions, and I'm now at the stage where I don't have an answer to it. I just have to say you might be spot on there. I think the key ones out of Friday were like stubbornness with this way of playing, and I'm just like,
particularly when he declined the opportunity twice when he made substitutions to rectify it. They were the ones. You had injured players. You didn't have to think of a tactical switch in the first half, which no manager likes to do. I remember when Jones hauled Lawless off in the first half and he was livid, and it's kind of like not the done thing, isn't it? He didn't have to do that. Mengi was injured, so he could have brought Moses on then. Or if Moses can't do 45 minutes, he could have brought on Brown. He could have brought on Woodrow. He could have brought on Pelly. He could have brought on anyone that could have changed it to 3 in the centre of the park. Because we were getting outnumbered in the centre of the park. Because what teams do to us is, even if they play a formation, let's say they play the 4-2-3-1, the wingers come in and they add to an extra man. Well, we haven't got that opportunity because we're pissing about with 3 centre halves, excuse my French, all 3 of which want to play centre of the centre half. They don't really want to, at the minute, until Amari Bell's back, they don't really want to play the side ones. They want to, play centre half. So we're getting outnumbered in midfield, and the optics of it look bad, right? Every single game, Kaminsky getting us out of shit. Every single game, even when we're winning. Look at Millwall. They offered absolutely 0 in that game, and Kaminsky still had to get us out of the mire twice. Whereas at the other end, we are getting into good positions. I would be much more critical of this system if it wasn't working from an attacking point of view, so I can understand why Rob goes with it. Because those numbers I've just read out of shots, and that's only shots, that's not final third entries or all the other data and analysis that people use these days. It is high, but it is coming at the detriment of our defence. Will that improve if and when Tom Lockyer comes back? I don't know. You would think that at the very least they'll be more organised if Tom comes back. But he's not going to be back for a while. Are we really going to go through this for, let's say, another 3 months? That's the earliest we're going to see Tom back, isn't it? If we are, there could be a hell of a lot more rough to come before we get to the smooth. And, well, the way it's going, you kind of wonder if we get that far or if the can gets pulled. I really hope it isn't, because I really hope that the 2 years that we've had under Rob Edwards does not end this way. But you mentioned right at the start this season when we did the podcast that you didn't want it to turn toxic, that you didn't want all that positivity and that support to leave. On Friday night, it left us. And now I'm not blaming anyone. If you were pissed off with that performance on Friday night, hey, I'm joining you, because I was too. And you've every right to be. That was a serious effort for everyone who went down there on Friday night. You'll have had to have taken a day off work, because you wouldn't have got down to Plymouth any other way unless you were local. Horrible driving conditions, horrible weather. We didn't even know if the game was going to go ahead with all of the rain and everything else that's been around the country and things. You deserved a better performance than that. Now, the players did not give that performance by design, right? They didn't go out there and think, do you know what? Who cares that it's 6 hours from Luton? We're going to be shit today. They did not do that. They tried their hardest. The people in the positions where we really need confidence are just so low, so out of confidence, and that's the end product of it. But I go back to what I said after the QPR game. The negativity in the stadium, and you're well within your rights to be pissed off with that performance. I was. Believe me, Paul, who drove me to the game, he probably got 4 hours of ear bashing on the way back, and that's the least that he needed when he was trying to drive through God knows how many roadworks and road closures and the likes. But save it for outside the ground. The negativity. If you are a person who thinks by shouting at them it's going to make them perform better, I've got news for you, I'm afraid. It isn't. They know that they've performed badly. They're not performing badly because they don't care. We need to get that out of our system. It's not right. Now, I agree with absolutely everyone that says that our football club is not what it was 10 years ago. Our football club is much better, much bigger, in a much better situation than it was. But what John Steele did say 10 years ago still rings true today, that our football club is better all round when we're all behind it for the 90 minutes. Once the final whistle goes and you leave the ground and you're down the pub, vent off to your heart's content. But whilst we're in that stadium, the longer we can get behind these boys, the more we can get behind these boys, the quicker we might get some confidence into them and turn it around, because this is going to get toxic. And and once it starts getting toxic, we saw it in the conference. Once it starts getting toxic, it's not a slippery slope. It's straight down, and we don't want to get on that situation. So I don't know what the answer is, other than the boys putting in a hell of a lot of a better performance, and that's down to them and Rob to look at each other in the mirrors and make sure it happens. But the negativity on Friday night, whilst justified, it just doesn't serve any use going forward. It makes you feel better, of course it does, but it ain't going to make them play better. It really isn't.
No, I agree. I said it at the beginning of the season in the preview podcast. I think the word of the season, we've not used it recently, but is expectation. The expectation levels are so much higher because of last season. I think that needs to be tempered. But I said that back then. I'm not just saying that now because of the results. I said I don't think if you expect Luton to go up automatically into the Premier League, I think you can almost kiss that goodbye already. But I thought at the beginning of the season, you shouldn't be thinking that anyway. I thought they'd be able to get into the playoffs, and that's still achievable. So that's where my expectation levels. But if other people's expectation levels are just that much higher, then that's where it comes from as well. But, you know, bad results, bad performances, which is what we're seeing, adds into the mix. It's not all one size fits all in this. But, yeah, it's been so good and so enjoyable for 10 years, largely, hasn't it? I mean, even the championship season, the first one, maybe we gloss over it a bit because we survived and there was COVID in the middle of it. But I don't remember it getting so bad after it being so good, which was the two back-to-back promotions at that point. Now it's been even better than that. It got to the Premier League, and yes, the Premier League deficiencies were exposed, but I think that there were reasons for that, and I've said that I believe all along that if the injury crisis hadn't been so severe, Luton probably would have made a good fist of it and a very good chance of them still being in the Premier League. And that's not the case. Lots of different factors are going to build into it, but I think that, yeah, somehow you've just got to try and hold it within yourself not to be bawling out the players. Like I've found it difficult today to talk about Elijah, for instance, because I think he is a very good player. On his day, he's almost unplayable. It's just not his day at the moment. But does it serve? What purpose does it serve to dig them out and shout at them and scream at them when the very nature of football fandom is you're supposed to be you're a supporter, aren't you?
There were people on Friday night that were clapping the players off. I didn't do it myself. particularly. I have done it in the past when we've lost. But there were people who were clapping the players off in a helping to be constructive, to try and keep their heads up sort of manner, that were getting shouted down by other fans. I mean, they're entitled to clap as much as you're entitled to boo at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, someone shouting at Elijah that he's crap, that he's not good enough for Luton, that he should have gone to Everton, that this, that and the other. Well, first of all, Everton didn't want him. That was just media talk. They might want him in January, but they haven't come in for him yet. So let's cut that crap out until it actually starts. There isn't a single player on that pitch on Friday night that isn't good enough to play for Luton, right? Let's also get that right. Every single player who played on that pitch on Friday night is more than good enough to play for Luton. They've all came through Premier League academies, or they've come up via the lower leagues and got promoted with Luton from this very division. So that's rubbish. And shouting at individuals, particularly Elijah, and telling him that is not going to get his confidence high. And you need his confidence to be high whilst he's still in the team, because we need some goals. And look around, Chong was anonymous until he went off the other night. Nelson's a young lad playing for the first game. I'm not going to dig him out too much. Clark, when he's played in that role behind the striker, hasn't really offered any assistance to him either. He's getting no real help. He's missing an awful lot of chances. You shouting at him is only going to exacerbate that even more. It just doesn't work. And we've been here before, Jimbo, before we did this podcast. We were the big cheese in the conference when we got relegated out of League Two. We had Club Hero in charge then. He got hounded out because performances were bad, because of exactly what you just said. The expectation was so high. The opposition used it as a cup final, and we initially couldn't cope. I fear we're getting back to that situation again, and it took us 5 years to recover the first time round. That's where we get to. We're a whole different club now. You're absolutely right to expect a whole lot more than what we expected, even when we were in the Championship the previous time. I don't necessarily buy the fact that it's all down to money, because an awful lot of money's going into Power Court and we're not as rich as people say that we are. But at the same time, the reason why we got to the Premier League in the first place was because we were all together collectively. And once that breaks up, particularly in the stands, once that breaks up, it takes a lot to get it back. And I just don't think it's helping. Am I for 1 minute suggesting you should be happy with Friday night's performance? No. Nobody is suggesting that for 1 minute. It was a hell of a long journey. I made it myself. I'm talking from experience. I'm not someone like on other forums and things that sit there and watch every game on television and react to it. You all see, a number of you come up to me at games. You all see me at games. I put myself out there. If you want to come and talk, I'm more than happy for it. I made that journey. I was as pissed off as all of you, but shouting at individuals when they're close enough to hear you, as hard as it is not to do, it just does not serve any purpose. And particularly when it's not like Elijah's missing chances on purpose. He really isn't. If he was like missing a chance and doing a little jig and really happy with it, then, be pissed off. But he's not, And if you think we're going to win every game of football in this league, stick into Google Maps the real world and it will direct you to somewhere where we are now. It's not going to happen. Should we be high up in the table at the end of this season? Absolutely we should. This squad, I've maintained this squad is better than the one that got us out of this division the last time round. Do we get promoted 7 games into the season? No, we don't. So we have to stick with this for another 39 games in the hope that it improves. But it isn't going to improve if we keep getting on everyone's backs.
No, that's right. And so maybe it's a question to throw open to other people, isn't it? Maybe get us in the comments. How do we stop that slide to toxicity? Can it be stopped? Should it stop? How do you change it? Because it's all right us sitting here, I think, and saying don't do that. But football's an emotional game, and
it's hard.
It is hard. The emotions of the night get to you, and then say we do this. It was a Friday night game this time, but we usually give it 24 hours and then we record this.
We needed to give it longer because I couldn't get home in time for 24 hours.
So we calmed down a bit. But I mean, I'm calmed down in the sense I don't think I'm ranting and raving, but I'm just so disappointed in that whole performance, that whole night. there really isn't anything that I can say to anybody that wants to criticise any aspect of that game that I can say you're wrong. Not that I want to say you're wrong. That's not what I'm here for. Just to say, like, maybe offer a counterpoint or something. I haven't got anything because you're right. All of it. The system didn't work. The basics weren't done. If you feel that there's a stubbornness going on, fair play. That's your opinion. I got no counter to that at the moment. Can it change? Yes, and there's obviously precedent because I don't want it to get to 10 games, but the 10 games into the Premier League, and Rob went, I don't like what's happening here, and he changed it around, and then it started to work. And then we got to January, injuries happened, everything changed, and then the problems that we're now facing, which you've already highlighted, like the Bournemouth game was the one which really sparked it off, and it's never really we never plugged the gaps since then. That happened. But can he change it? Yes. And I just hope that he looks at that in a sort of set of 7 games, and maybe even Oxford is too soon because it's boom straight away after the Plymouth game. So then maybe it's looking towards the Sheffield United game. I think there'll be changes personnel-wise. There has to be for the Oxford game, but then maybe you get a week to work towards the Sheffield Wednesday, not a full week actually, to work towards the
Sheffield United. They're bloody idiots enough as it is without calling them Sheffield Wednesday.
Sheffield United, yeah, that's what I mean. And maybe you get to do that, but is that enough time? I don't know. I'm thinking maybe you have to get to the international break and you've got 2 weeks to go, right, this is not working, then we'll try and change it. Maybe that's the time. For now, you've got to try and grit your teeth and just try and get something out of these games. Try and take some of your chances. That will ease the pressure. And maybe there's a personnel change there that needs to happen for the chances to be taken. We'll see. We'll discuss that in the next podcast. But I'm thinking if it's a really difficult one for Oxford because we can't have that again, and it will be bad, I think. And I don't want it to be, but you can see that be a possibility. But is it too soon to make major changes to what they're trying to do? And I think probably it is.
Yeah. Style and formation and everything isn't going to change on Tuesday night unless it benefits us in a way that we match up better to them by changing. Because, by the time they got home from Plymouth, it would have been I didn't get home till 4:00 and they're in a coach. So they're not going to have been a great deal different to that. So they'll have only done something light on Saturday, train on Sunday, train on Monday, and then it's game on Tuesday. It's not a lot of time, 48 hours to change tactics and everything else. So don't see it changing. We haven't heard from Rob yet. Let's do that. Let's hear from Rob. Let's hear what he had to say about it. He was criticised for a few of the words that he says in this interview, particularly the bit that we were the better side in between both boxes. To his credit, we had 18 shots, and not many of them. I think there was one long range one from Joe Taylor in the second half. The rest of them were all in and around the penalty box. So we're getting into the positions. So it probably is justified to say that. But it doesn't sound great when you lose 3-1. I readily accept that. But here is what he had to say after the game.
Both boxes, I think, was real. The story of the night, both ends of the pitch. We weren't clinical enough at one end, and then at the other, didn't defend well enough. They were more ruthless. So, credit to them. They made a lot of blocks and defended very, very well. I think we got into their final third twice as often as they did. We didn't make the keeper work enough. And, almost the last goal kind of sums it up a little bit. We've got a great opportunity right in the box, almost in the 6-yard box, and then a few seconds later, we lose the ball, don't stop the counter, and then the ball ends up in the back of our net. And disappointing night. The supporters have travelled a heck of a long way to see the team tonight. They didn't see a team that wasn't, the lads were giving everything. They were trying. There's an energy there. The lads were trying to carry out the right plan. We got in behind them a lot. We got into some really good positions and couldn't take them. So the lads were trying, but it didn't come off. It didn't come off tonight, and I hope everyone gets back safely. Everyone will be disappointed. But look, we go again on Tuesday, and we want to try and put those things right. It's not like there's a million things that are going wrong at the moment. It's pretty clear. But obviously, I've come out and said this a number of times already this season. So it's something that we need to fix quickly. We'll go away, revisit. I'll go and watch Oxford tomorrow, and we'll do our homework on them, and we will, give it absolutely everything at home on Tuesday to try and get a win back on the board. There's not a million things wrong here. We've got so many good places, positions. We've got to keep believing that we will score, and then we've got to be better at the other end of the pitch and make sure we're defending, putting bodies on the line, and getting out and blocking crosses and blocking shots, and things that we've, historically, especially in this league, been very, very good at. And that's something that we need to make sure that we're doing as well. The boys are with it, and they're trying. So it's important at the moment we back the players as well. Mm-hmm. That's really important. So of course everyone will be disappointed and upset, but that could quickly change to a lot of joy and elation as well if we can perform well, like we can and have done, and win a game of football.
Yeah, that's what Rob had to say after the game then. I mean, what were your thoughts on that, Jimbo?
Yeah, I mean, on those comments that you mentioned about the playing better in between both boxes, obviously I saw the game. To my eyes, no, that wasn't. But I think that is more a player management comment. You can't just come out and go, we were terrible everywhere. Like as a fan, you could. He's the manager of those players, and he's got to go and GM up for a game in 3 days' time at that point. So I think that comment is to say there were some positive things and we can work on it. I'd like to think that when they get on the training pitch, there's a more of a less of an emotive reaction to it, because they will study the game and go.
I was going to say,
like we were, the basics weren't there, things weren't happening. There was no real feeling that it was going to change on the pitch.
No, I agree. He gives that interview, 10 minutes after the final whistle so that they can all sod off home. I would imagine in the cold light of day, if James spoke to, or if we had him right here now and he was honest with us, he wouldn't have used that comment. He'd have explained the situation a little bit clearer. Corners. I will just cover this briefly. We'll cover it again. We'll do a bit more of a deeper dive in the international break. I'm aware that time's getting on, and we've got lots of podcasts coming out this week, so I don't want you to hear my voice relentlessly this week. But someone did ask us to mention corners. 15 corners on Friday night. There was a game at Preston, I think it was, 13 corners. In fact, Luton have an awful lot of corners this season. I think we're well past 50 in 7 games this season. We haven't scored from one directly yet. That's not necessarily the corner taker, though, is it? I can't remember. I think I did add them up, but my memory's completely gone. I think it's 53 corners that we've had. I don't remember any of them going straight out for a goal kick. I don't remember any of them going out the other side for a throw-in without anyone touching it, like shit corners do. I don't remember too many headed away by the first man. Some will. Christ, he's going to scuff the odd one here and there, and there were a couple on Friday night that Clark headed at the front post, which surely can't be the game plan. But by and large, they land in an area where the attacking players can go and attack it. Now, Mark McGuinness has had 9 shots in the last 2 games. Now, he doesn't go forward for anything other than free kicks and corners, and we haven't had too many free kicks around the box. The only one we had on Friday night, Elijah shouldered over the crossbar. So these 9 shots that he's had have all been from corners. So they are getting on the end of Alfie's corners, but they're not going in the back of the net. So is there anything wrong with the corners? There's an awful lot of people that want us to do something different, and I understand that. If you've not scored in 53, then maybe there is that justification. But equally, the responsibility is on the geezer who's heading it to put the ball between the white things and score. It's not necessarily a situation of, the delivery shit, why is Doughty taking all of them? Sometimes it is literally down to the fact that he's putting it in a beautiful area and the person who's attacking it just isn't getting the right connection to score the goal. However, the one thing I would say that I would like to see an awful lot more of with corners, twice on Friday night, And twice against Sheffield Wednesday, Victor Moses offered himself for a short corner, and immediately 2 players come out because they're worried that they're going to play the short corner. Hey, if you've done your homework, we are not playing that short corner. But that frees up space in the centre for Mark McGuinness to have more space to make his run, get ahead on the ball. And I use Mark McGuinness because they are all aimed at him. I'd like to see more of that. Now, anyone could do that. Now, if Clark's doing this header on the front post, I don't really want Jordan Clark heading a ball from a corner because the chances are he's not going to out-jump anyone at his height. Come short. Take the man from the front post away with you and open up someone who can head the ball at the front post to have a free header. Hell, everyone else does it to us. So my take on the corners, is it Doughty's fault? Should we let someone else take them? Not really. James mentioned earlier in the podcast that it came up on Sky that Alfie's numbers are all really, really good. He's created the most chances in the division. He has something like 2.7 expected assists. He's got his second assist the other night. His numbers are really, really good. What he can't do is cross the ball, ask for time to stop so that he can run into the middle and then head the cross in. At some point, the onus has got to be on the other person. And as I say, if all of Alfie's corners were going out for a goal kick or straight down the goalkeeper's throat or any of that, then yeah, we've got problems. But they're not really. I can't really remember too many of them. Of course, the odd one, the law of averages is going to say that it does. But in the main, they're all there to be attacked. You just got to go and attack this sort of thing.
They are. I think there's an element, again, of maybe expectation because it was such a potent weapon in the Premier League, but the Premier League aren't used to. They couldn't cope with what Luton were doing last year. It was just in the opposite end.
Well, you just have to look at Everton in the Premier League as well. They've stayed up, and Burnley under Sean Dyche before it, they basically stayed up for the last 10 years on set-piece goals alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I think that you're sort of comparing it to last season and it's not quite happening. But the Championship, that's bread and butter to the Championship. There's a lot of big players. You see the Sheffield Wednesday game the other day at Kenilworth Road. Big players bullying the likes of Elijah a lot, some of the time not fairly, but doing it. And that's one thing you expect of the Championship, that sort of muscle. I hear the people that say do something different because it is basically sort of put it in the mix of stuff in it, really, and then you're hoping one of your defenders is going to get on the end of it. And so far,
which they are.
So far they are, but it's not going in.
Yeah.
So maybe do something different. Try that short corner, a little bit of variation, because at the minute defenders are coming out on top, whether that's by design or by fortune. That's the fact, isn't it? So, I mean, they had Alan McCormack, not solely on set piece duty. That wasn't his role last season, but now he's gone. But they've got a team that I asked Rob about it early in the season. What's the situation now that Mac has gone? And he's like, well, no, there's a team that sort of work on it. And before that, obviously, you had Alan Sheehan, who was doing the same role. So maybe there's something there to work on. I've no doubt that they work on corners, but if it's just get the delivery right and get it in the box and then hope that Luton's players get on the end of it, I feel there probably needs to be a bit of a plan B there. And I understand anybody that wants to say that's got to change.
Yeah, that's why I'd say bring someone and threaten the short corner, because it will bring men out of the box and it will make the life an awful lot easier. Or even aim it for someone other than Mark McGuinness. If McGuinness is getting his head on 9 of these and hasn't hit the target with any of them, I think he's had one shot on target in those 2 games, but that was the one that led to the penalty. That was a recycled corner, wasn't it, from the edge of the box. If he's not getting them on target, maybe aim for someone who can get them on target. Reece Burke's a big lad. He scored goals. Ted and Mengi scored from a couple of scored from a set piece last season, so he would be another one. But yeah, don't think it's all on Doughty. I think it's what we're.
It can't be, because his numbers. When you say his numbers are good, his numbers are first for everything. If every sort of wing play and delivering and assisting, you want to say he's first for pretty much all of them.
Kind of makes you wish there was a left back behind him so that he could just focus on wing play, really, isn't it?
Exactly that, because he has been caught out a couple of times, and that's not his forte. His forte is doing what he did last season in the Premier League and what he's currently delivering now, just not getting. He should have far more assists next to his name, and it's not happening for the reasons we've discussed. And his deliveries are largely good, but people view it on the outcome, don't they? So they won't necessarily view it. The deliveries are good. There's nobody sticking the ball in the net. That's a fact. That's true. That's a legitimate thing to say. So, maybe a little bit of a change here and there. If you're getting 15 corners in the first place as well,
you're doing something right.
You're doing something right. It's just that final bit is not happening in an attacking sense. In a defensive sense, it's not just the final bit. It's the bit before the final bit, and then the stopping them before they get to that bit as well. That's a lot more work, I think.
Yep, lots of work to do, particularly in defence. And we'll see where we go. That's pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. There were no correct scores, I'm pleased to say, actually, as we lost 3-1. No one predicted that. Most people predicted a Luton win. There were one or two that predicted a draw. No one predicted a Plymouth win. So everything scoreboard-wise, correct score-wise, is as it was before Friday night. Just before we go, a couple of announcements. First of all, as we said right at the start of the podcast, we have been nominated as one of the finalists in the Best Football League podcast category at the Football Content Awards. 50% of that is done by judges. 50% of it is a public vote. So James and I and the whole team behind us and all the guests that we have on would really, really love to have a shot at winning this trophy. So we would love it if you could just spare a few seconds to vote for us. All of the details of how to do that is in the show notes. I should just add, if you voted on their website, you can also register votes on their social media feeds. You're able to do one per social media feed. So if you have an Instagram, Facebook or Twitter account, or all three.
Threads as well.
You can vote for us more than once by doing it on all of the different outlets.
For that, you have to go to the Best Football League podcast post that the Football Content Awards have done and comment on the post. That's for all of the Meta-owned ones, so Insta, Threads and Facebook. On Twitter, we've put out a tweet where you can just copy the phrase that you need to put. So it's we'd like and tag us in, and that you'd like us to win the Football League podcast. Look on our social media. I explained it a lot better there, but that's the way you can do it. So technically you can vote 5 times.
Which will give us potentially 5 times the chance of winning. So that would be fantastic. And we would really appreciate it if you can do that. If you'd like to have a glimpse into the future of Luton Town, Luton under-21s are at home to Burnley on Friday night, and Solid have put together a hospitality package, which they've done for most of the under-21 games recently. Tickets are £30. That gets you a meal before the game, gets you half-time tea and coffee, and that might not be a bad thing because the temperatures are dropping off a little bit now, aren't they? So get yourself some free half-time tea and coffee, and obviously your seat will be in the director's area as well. Tickets are £30. Again, we'll put the link to book tickets in the show notes. You have until Wednesday at 6 o'clock to get those booked. Tickets are selling, but it'd be fantastic if we can sell plenty more, because all of the profits go towards Solid, which in turn goes back into the academy and, well, helps us for a better future for the football club and brings more players like Zach Nelson, like Joe Johnson, and many others that have just recently signed their professional contracts through. So if you want a hospitality package for Friday night's game at home to Burnley, check out, all of the details are on our website, but as I say, we'll put the link in the show notes. Thanks to everyone who's got in touch with comments or those that came up to me on Friday night. As I say, if you have anything for us to discuss, we will try our hardest to do that. And we take on board all of the comments and try and improve the podcast as much as we can. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode of the podcast. Thanks also to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music.
You have a new single out this week called We Are the Children on the Luton-based record label Vandalism Begins at Home.
Check that out. And to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Until next time, which will be a preview of what is now suddenly a massive game of football at Kenilworth Road against Oxford United from James and myself. Come on, you Hatters, let's be better than Friday night.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.